सर्वधर्म स्वरूपिणे अवतार वरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः.
Yes, This song is called Be the Change, inspired by the words of Mahatma Gandhi, who lived for peace and not violence, and told us to be the change we wish to see in the world. Freedom's calling, I feel the fire that's deep inside us. Everybody wants change, but tell me who will guide us. To the leaders that passed away, put up your lighters. It's a beautiful struggle, but it cannot divide us. We're the ones that we've always been waiting for. See yourself in the mirror and open up the door. Walk through it and feel the love throughout your pores. Be the light, life's purpose is to feel joy. Metaphysical, lyrical, standing up for truth. The only one to make change is walking in your shoes. Be the example, don't complain about the news. Making music and serving the world with the loo. Now you can be the same, or you can be the change. Find strength from inside, break through the chains. No one to blame, nothing to prove. You create your reality, it's up to you. Be the change
that you wanna see in the world. Like Gandhi live for peace,
aspire to peace.
Someone who fights for the beliefs like Martin Luther King.
Aspire to be
that love,
that light,
like Christ, for the moment in need.
And if you believe
in Jehovah,
Allah,
Buddha,
Krishna,
it's love to me.
My soul yearns for peace in a world that's flooded with war. History's littered with body scar trying to...
Oh, man, I woke up this morning and I had this startling realization that we're going to have to come up with something new because I think the 100th monkey's been reached, Ramon. I mean, where do we go from here? I'm watching this conscious wave across the planet, and a lot of it has to do with turmoil, the stuff that's going on. But when I see that turmoil happening in the world, I see the other edge of that blade and how it's waking people up and it's making people ask questions. And I'm just so grateful to be alive at this time, watching our race, our being wake up. Just absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. And I don't know. What do you think? Where do we go from here, Ramon?
I feel like there's different levels of the 100th monkey. It's like we reached the 100th monkey, so now I think we're at the, okay, something is really wrong with the world, and they've been lying to me. And then, you know, I think the unity conscious one is almost there. That's the one we're really waiting for.
You know, on certain levels, I think it's already there, and it's just a matter of it's spreading. And that's what I'm seeing right now, is that there are pockets around the planet of this consciousness that's awake, that's alive, that's aware.
Speaking of,
and they are, and from those points, it's all spreading out. So this is good stuff, man. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive.
Speaking of, I just started, I'm here in Japan, as most of you know, and I just started teaching at elementary school. And, you know, I'll go through the questions like ask your English teacher questions in English. And one girl, she's about 10 years old, asked a question that not even adults would ask. It was so amazing. She basically asked me, when I die in this life, what do I want to reincarnate is on the next life? And I was so flabbergasted by the question, because it was such a mature question. Because, you know, most kids, they're asking, what do you like to eat? What do you like in Japan? Why you moved to Japan? Are you married?
What's your favorite video game?
Yeah.
Right.
But it was so flabbergasted when she asked me that question, and the vice principal was there with me, and she was just like, what? So the vice principal said to me, oh, you don't have to answer that question. I said, no, of course I'm going to answer that question. So I just basically told her that I want to reincarnate as an alien so I can fly around space, and all the kids started laughing.
There you go. There you go.
But speaking of things that are going on in the world, just really quickly. And, when we read this news, please use your discernment. It's very, very important for you guys to use your discernment. Because, unfortunately, you can't trust everything you hear. So the feds make the first arrest in the BP oil spill. And that's from CBS, so that's why I say use your discernment.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No Jack.
Hello?
What did
I lose you for a second there, Ramon?
Did you lose me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, there we go. With the
something there I got posted on the top of our news section about that alternative free energy system. It seems that one company that I linked there, I'm starting to smell something that isn't quite up to par. So, I got a couple of people that I've been in dialogues with over this thing, and there seems to be some hitches there. So anyways, like Ramon said, you got to take all this stuff with a grain of salt and do your own investigation on all the stuff that you see, hear, taste, touch, feel, all those things, because there is no substitute for experience, and you can't know something until you actually experience that. So anyways,
so you can. Oh, the song you just listened to is by the Luminaries, and that is called "Be the Change," and that's featuring. I always forget his name. Well, I'll mention it later. Just remind me, Tom, to mention it later.
Trevor Hall, right?
Yes, Trevor Hall. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
So, really quick before our guest falls asleep, you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Just scroll down, click on that. And also, my book is still out, and so any of you guys are interested, it's called Scratching the Cosmic Conscious, and you can scroll down and click on the links. So, Tom.
Dianne Collins is an original thinker and one of the foremost thought leaders of our time. She's a master of translating ancient knowledge into quantum modern wisdom that provides a transformative platform for the way we conduct our business and personal affairs. Dianne is creator of QuantumThink, a new system of thinking that has us leap from the outdated old world view limits of the industrial age to begin thinking from the more accurate and up-to-date new world view of our current quantum age. Along with her husband and business partner, she consults visionary leaders and executives in the world's leading corporations, including Accenture, AT&T, CNN, and Dupont, as well as presenting QuantumThink to entrepreneurs and students, homemakers and professionals, celebrities and evolutionaries worldwide. Dianne Collins, welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio.
Thank you so much, Tom and Ramon. It's such a thrill and exciting to be here with you. I couldn't wait for this conversation.
I'll tell you what, this is one of the easiest reading and most enjoyable reads I have had in a long time. I sat down, started reading this, and a couple of hours later, I looked up at the clock and went, "Wow, where did the time go?"
Wow, that's so great. Well, I toiled. I toiled for many years to make it entertaining to read, fun. So I'm glad you had that experience. Thank you.
Let's start off a little bit about you before we get into your work. What brought you to the point where what was the shift in your life, or how did you start? What was the shift in your life that made you start thinking about consciousness and reality and manifestation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, it really, as I say, I didn't have one of those great awakenings, I always thought, why didn't I have one of those great awakenings? But it really, I didn't. I was born into it. Because I do remember being about 4 years old, looking in this hallway long mirror that was in my family's house, pinching my arm and starting my questioning right there. Like, wow, what's this? You know, and so I became aware of self. I became aware of being aware of self-consciousness. And then as I got older, I was always very, you know, questioning philosophical, question reality. I have a big sticker, a big banner in my office, question reality. And I looked around and saw that the way that people are with each other, war, crime, the hypocrisy, I mean, just all of it, that I say, you know, it's become like institutionalized today. I saw it as a teenager and I thought, there's something wrong with this picture. Stop the planet, I want to get off. How did I land here where people, right. I really did. I thought, how is it that I'm on a planet where people actually intentionally manufacture weapons and have a whole industry around it, we might add, to kill one another en masse, and then, you know, call themselves, quote, God-fearing people. So I thought, you know, how was I going to make a contribution, or how was this ever going to shift? And the only thing I was ever interested in was evolution of consciousness, because I couldn't see it happening any other way.
Did you have any formal training?
And when formal training, well, at that point, I started to study everything. And I had an older brother and sister, so they were, you know, while I was still in high school, they were in university, and they started bringing home philosophy books, and I started reading Western philosophers, Eastern philosophers, theosophy, you know, fourth way, different yoga lineages, you name it. I was looking for what could have me get some kind of a solution to this huge discrepancy, or what we would say, you know, between the 3D and the 5D, or however you want to call it, reality. So, and I did go to university, where at the time they didn't have such degrees as they do today in consciousness studies. So the closest thing I could find was philosophy. So I did study philosophy at the graduate level. I never did get the master's degree, and I studied psychology, and I studied all the new the new Gestalt therapies, and you know, that was the time when all these encounter group type things were coming in. Right. So that's what, you know, I really just kept looking and investigating, and eventually I came across Fritjof Capra's Tao of Physics, because I always knew it was about how do we connect to that awakening of, let's say, the spiritual in us. But you couldn't really go out and say that in this kind of 3D reality that is the outer, what we would call the outer world. Right. So when I came across the quantum science, and I had to almost laugh to myself, because they would come up and they'd say, oh, well, we proved that, you know, there are mind-to-mind connections. And it was like, for me, a cosmic smile, because really? No kidding. I mean, you know, the Vedantic consciousness studies have been telling us this for thousands of years. But, okay, great. Now the science is coming to verify it. And so it occurred to me that now, if I could, because science is a sort of, right, God in our culture, or at least it was until we got into this liberal conservative divisiveness that we have today. But people like science, or people, we're brought up in that industrial age kind of thinking where the scientists said only physical matter is real.
Right.
And so our whole society is oriented around the five senses. So I thought, well, if I could use, the language of science to talk to people about this, and I really saw that as a possibility. And so what my dream was to create a television series that would transform consciousness, that would awaken awareness as you watch, and to make it entertaining, not just a talking heads or, what we think of as boring.
Right.
And really that was my dream, and that's how I just started writing treatments, and then I met my husband, Alan K. Collins, who's my partner in all things in business. And he is a master coach, period. He just really knows how to listen to what people aren't saying so they can connect to that in themselves that takes them for the next leap. And he said to me, well, I'm coaching people, but I don't really know where this, it's not going anywhere. I need a structure. So I was like, don't worry, honey, I'll make you something. And I did. It was very easy for me, to tell me what result you want, and I'll create an experience that will have you connect to yourself in such a way that you'll create it. So that's one of just, I was given that gift. I'm sure, as I would say, we're all given the experiences, gifts, where we're born, what country we move to, all of it, so that it's sort of like, infinite intelligence equipping us to deliver on our purpose, on our job on the planet with the capital J. So that's what I started doing. And then I realized, I thought I was like the nice little wife, right, cooking up my husband a program to lead. And then I realized, hey, I'm making some distinctions here. I mean, it was like, this is my work. At the end of my book, Do You QuantumThink, I didn't choose QuantumThink. It chose me, literally. It wasn't like one day I sat down, hey, I think I'll think up a new system of thinking. It just evolved that way.
Right. Well, so, yeah, so many authors report the same sort of thing as far as it choosing them and it just coming out. Just bringing it out. It's something that's already inside them. And our experiences give us everything that we need, build us up with the tools that we need to complete whatever our purpose is. Yeah.
Speaking of, I think at this point it's very important to tell the story where, first of all, I was dying laughing in the book, especially when you tell us the story where you meet your friend. Well, you didn't know him at the time, the author.
Isaac Chavez Singer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell us that story.
Well, what happened was, after I got out of graduate school, right here I'm studying philosophy, and I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I going to make a living here? And so I ended up in a corporate job. So it was like, what was I doing here, God? But I knew there was a reason, because I already understood there was a reason for everything. However, I needed to be able to pursue my career as a television creator. I thought, I've got to get myself independent. So I thought, people used to say to me, well, you're a great writer, Di. You could write these romance novels, my cousin said to me. I said, that's good. I could write 4 of those a year. I'd make enough money. So I'm sitting down, and I'm trying to write a romance novel. and I'm stuck. Now, I never get, one of the things is I have this, like, unlimited creativity in writing. It just, like, comes out. I almost have to stop myself. But in this particular genre, I was stuck. So one day I was in this delirium, and I'm talking to my cousin in New York at the time. I'm in Miami, and she's, I said, I think Isaac Bashevis Singer lives down the street. Well, he, who, in case you don't realize who he was, he's since passed away, he was a Nobel Prize laureate in literature, particularly in children's literature, but he was Polish-born and just very highly revered. He had just won this 25-year, Silver Monument Award from the New York Times, and, very, very big. And so I say, I'm going to look him up. I looked him up, and sure enough, they had his phone number. He had a second home in Miami Beach. And I called the number. I was crazed, in a state of craze, thinking, oh, what the heck? And he answers the phone. And I was shocked. He goes, hello? He had this Polish Jewish accent. Hello? And he was at the time 82 years old. So I said, Isaac? And he goes, yeah? I said, you've got to help me. I'm trying to write a romance novel, and I'm stuck. I've got to talk to you, just like that. And he goes, well, tell me about yourself. I said, well, I was a philosophy major, and then I got in this corporate job, and he goes like this, a philosopher turned marketer turned writer? This I've got to meet. True story, no embellishment. So we met the next day, and we're sitting there, and, he's saying, anyway, so I'm asking him, how did it come about? And then I said, okay, now, help me. Why am I stuck? And he said to me, in order to write junk, you've got to have a junkie soul. I can't forget. Just, God bless him. And I was like, what? He stopped me, when your consciousness or your mind stops just right there. He stopped my mind. And then he quickly followed up by saying, he said, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the people who write these type of books aren't great at it. That's their talent. But the point was made. If it's not in your soul to do it.
Wow. So let's dive into QuantumThink. Here's a big question, and this will maybe you can give us a quick synopsis. But this is the question that we will be expanding on through the whole show here tonight. What is QuantumThink?
The big question, right?
Yeah.
Well, I've toyed with a number about, probably about 1,000 ways of answering that question. But basically, what happened is this. Along that way of investigation and studying and trying to write a TV series, I met Dr. Fred Alan Wolf. Let me just preface this by saying, because my husband says, you're not answering the question, but I'll answer the what, okay? Because I'm more interested in why should we, and how did it happen, which I do want to tell you. But what it is a system of thinking. Everything in this universe is a system, right? Interpenetrating. We're in a system of wholes interpenetrating one another, including our thinking system. But that was my revelation. But what happened is I met Dr. Fred Alan Wolf, who you and your listeners may know as one of the stars in What the Bleep Do We Know movie. Do you know that movie?
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. And he we were actually working on something in television at the time, during the 90s, and I was hanging out with him and this independent TV producer for a week, just the three of us in Connecticut, and working on this project. And during it, he explained to me the way that science makes discoveries, and these discoveries create new language, and that language comes into our thinking and into our lives through the language. So I use as an example that everyone knows in my book, the term quantum leap. So the term quantum leap, which, as you probably know, was the discovery, I think, by Max Planck, father of modern quantum physics, that energy does not move in a smooth, continuous flow, but it bursts in packets packets of energy he called quanta. And they're discontinuous leaps because, a quantum leap is literally, it's an instantaneous change in state. So with no traceable or discernible pathway. So now that term came into the language, as far as my research found it, about 1927. So I say, you couldn't even think of a quantum leap before that. Literally. So our worldview, our beliefs, what we think is true or possible, not only shapes how we think, it shapes what we're even able to think.
Right.
Because before that came in, right, we're not talking about a quantum leap. Now it's in the mainstream thinking and consciousness, and we usually use it to mean a big thing, but it's anything discontinuous with the past, which I was thinking when you two were talking at the beginning of the show. And, because that's the first time I heard you, Tom, talking about, I'm taking a little diversion here, but I wanted to mention this. That's the first time I heard you talking about, okay, the 100 monkeys, right? We've reached it.
Right.
And, when you look at because that's really quantum thinking, is like holding the reality that you already want to happen. But as I say, I diverge, but I want to get back to that because I think that is the way, when you look in the world and you see, this disparity going on, like all this horrific stuff, and I hope we'll be able to talk about this more, but I can really see it happening quantum leap style, even though we're not accustomed to that. But anyway, so what happened is Fred taught me this about the term, and I realized, and as I call it my revelation, that since everything in the universe is a system, that it wasn't just one term, one terminology. It's that the entire world view is shaping the way we think, unbeknownst to us, unbeknownst to we who are even, born into this incarnation, already here kind of with, some knowledge, okay, I'm here to make something happen, and it's going to be a leap in consciousness, and we're all doing our part and consciously doing our part in that. So what even those of us who are, or as I call the consciousness crowd, lovingly, we don't realize how much our thinking, and definitely all of our institutional cultures, but, the society that we live in, the educational culture, the medical institution, all of it is shaped by the industrial age world view, right?
Right.
Rational science came in and said, here's how it is, because they had to separate the spirit, even though a lot of the scientists were spiritual, but they left that to the church.
Right. So this is one of our biggest obstacles for right now that we have is changing that mindset, breaking down and really examining how our thought patterns work. Why am I thinking this? When I personally, I do a little exercise. I call it throwing up a flag within my own mind. Whenever I think something or I say something, and I kind of look at myself from a third-person perspective, and get a little analytical with myself, and why did I do this? What's the root source, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and break it down for myself to try to understand where that thought came from. Especially, I mainly do this through the negative things that the negative thought processes that I have. If I have something, it'll never work, Tom, the flag goes up. Why did you think that? Have you seen, or you do have some pretty good exercises in the book to work on that, your own personal thought processes to get this ball rolling. Could you go through some of those?
Well, can I give you another view on what you just said?
Sure.
Because first you have to see these two worldviews, because this is really what quantum thinking is, an expansion. So we're not trading in the expanded worldview, right? That we know at the edge of knowledge today, which I'll call for short the quantum worldview or quantum thinking, and what I call the old worldview, the classical, mechanical, that's a key word, worldview that started in the industrial age up through the time of Einstein. So when you look at these, first you have to look at those and say, well, how does this old worldview influence the way we think? Well, it was the universe as machine, right? A giant clockwork machinery that if you could break it down into its separate parts, figure out how they work together in a cause and effect way. It's a world of solid objects. Only the physical is real. In the physical dimension, you look separate from me, we look separate from each other, we look separate from objects. So it's not in the collective mind yet, at least it's dormant there maybe, but not yet awakened, that, let's say it's awakening, right? So that's it. It's like that taught us to analyze, to understand conceptually, to all the things you just said. So even though you are a new worldview person, right? Mm-hmm. I think the way that you described that was a little bit of a vestige of that old world analytical thinking, because this is where the quantum leap in consciousness becomes relevant. Now you look at, so let me just try to give a real quick picture. So what is the quantum worldview, right?
Right.
A multi-dimensional reality, as I like to use 7 dimensions of physical, energetic, subtle energy, spiritual dimension, the esoteric dimension of soul and prophecy, the cosmic dimension of cosmic laws operating throughout everything and therefore in you and me, and the divine, the ultimate mystery, all of it. So, and the virtual, how could I leave that out, of mind and consciousness and all extensions of it. So when you look at this quantum worldview where things move backward and forward through time, so it's beyond physical time and chronological time and physical space, beyond those limits, it's observer created, it's a giant mind. The old worldview, giant machine. New worldview, giant mind. It's not a matter-based reality. It's a consciousness-based reality. Oh, and we are the point of connection to that consciousness. We're the ones who have the capability, the opportunity the gift, the blessed gift, to be able to shape it when we're aware and awake, to be able to go beyond the automatic limits of what you just described, Tom. It's like
Right.
we have these thoughts. Now, I call it the myth of choice. So, like, I was growing up and I learned in mind science was one of my studies. As you think, so you become. Thought creates reality. You know, form follows thought. I thought, thought creates reality? Well, how does it say that? And if all you had to do was change your thought to change the world or change your life, then how come it still looks the way it does, right? And that's really led me to it. 6,000 years of wisdom at the touch of an iPhone. How come we're not living it? And that's what I discovered, is that because of this old worldview conditioning, in many ways we have these automatic thought patterns, most of which are not even ours. So when you realize that we're living in a quantum world, you realize we exist in fields of energy, intelligence, consciousness, awareness, right? Connect. So in the field, they're not even your thoughts, Tom. It's like, I call it like this, an easy way to distinguish it. A thought is visiting you. Now, I have a term for these automatic pathways called a least action pathway, action pathway. The way the energy goes, because it's been that route before.
Right.
The creative action, it comes from science, and actually I learned about that from Fred too. So when you can just distinguish, because you asked how do we do it, right? And that's really what it's about today. Everybody wants to know, okay, we have the knowledge, we know subtle energy, we know chakras, we know this, we know all the dimensions, we know the 12 DNA strand, right? All of it. How do we start living this? How do we become the fusion and the infusion points of this, so that we're embodying it and therefore emanating it out? So that's what we're talking about here. So I have these practices for the mind and awareness. So one of the QuantumThink principles, infinite possibility. What keeps us from thinking from infinite possibility? The least action pathways. So think of it. If you were at choice, I'll ask you the question, and Ramon too. If you were at choice in that thought, in a thought, would you actually choose the thought, I don't think I can get that done? Whatever the it is.
Right.
Wouldn't you? Right?
Yeah, well, it's the automatic response that's ingrained within me.
Well, it isn't even within you. That's what
the automatic response that is ingrained within the energy field, yes.
Exactly.
I got it.
It may not even be in yours. And, one of the things that it's like I keep bringing up Fred. Fred is with me tonight. Became a friend of Alan and me, though we don't see each other often, but, you spend a week with someone, right? There's some kind of bonding. But anyway, and I call him my official mentor. He wrote the foreword to my book. Thank you, Fred. But he said, it's like we relate to ourselves as a body with a mind. But he says it's really more like we're a body within a giant, the one mind, the one consciousness. And it's a good way to relate to it, because then you don't get stuck. As you just got it. You just made that transformation immediately. It's like you don't get stuck with that thought. And the important thing about just being able to distinguish a least action pathway, you don't have to analyze it. You don't have to say, this is what you were talking about. Where did it come from? Why, is this my upbringing, or because my mother did this or my grandfather did that? No. It's quantum thinking, it's irrelevant. We don't really have time for that, and it's irrelevant. We don't need it anymore. It's like that's a vestige of the old. It's like we're, the snake letting go of that old skin, because we are in this new time. We are in this emerging new consciousness, and we are co-creating it. So we do. It's time to literally throw off what we don't need. So we don't need all the analysis of why and the wherefore, which, by the way, you can never get to anyway, because you can never get to.
I really like that. I really like that.
This really reminds me of several things, and I'll tell a quick story. Because I can see exactly what you're talking about, and then as you're talking, experiences come up. So I was having a meeting with the Japanese teachers, and they were talking about how hard is it for them to teach writing to the kids, and I'm speaking of the English alphabet. And I'm sitting there dumbfounded that they're saying, oh, it's so difficult, teaching the uppercase letters and the lowercase letters together. And I'm thinking, okay, these are 5th and 6th graders who know around 500 to 600 Chinese characters, and learning 26 new 26 new letters is difficult. Really? So the point with that is, as you're saying this, it really brings it back to, for example, water. So how does water travel? It travels to the least
path of least resistance.
Exactly. Thank you, Tom. So it makes so much sense when you say that. So let me see if I understand this correctly. So the more of us do this and put that energy into the energy field, the easier it starts getting for the rest of us to quantum think. Is that correct, or am I missing something?
It's not only correct. I mean, that's what your whole show is based on, right?
Yes.
But you see, because one of the really interesting principles, Ramon, and I love that because it's so logical, right? You're saying, right? They know 5, and I know those characters are, they look to an English, right? I'm somebody who English is my native language, but I have been to the Far East. And I remember the experience of going there and realizing, oh my God, I couldn't find my way around here, right? Because you're just looking at these pictures. I guess I could vibe in, and really at this point. But I had to have it written on a piece of paper, right, where the taxi should be taking me. They had to write it in whatever country. I was in Japan, and I was in Taiwan. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But it's not logical now. Oh, it's hard for them to learn this 26. No, not really. But you see, if we are in fundamentally, what do we know about reality? That this is the question I ask myself and put it in the QuantumThink, is we know there's creation. And we know that we have been endowed, right, with that power, let's say, to create. That's what we do. So if you were going to create, so fundamental, again, to the quantum worldview is that there are no absolutes. That's the theory of uncertainty. Can't measure the speed, the velocity, and the location of a particle at the same time, because everything is energy in flux. So that's just logic. If you have the location, then you'd have to stop it, and therefore you don't know the velocity. if you have the velocity, you don't know where it's located. So from this comes Werner Heisenberg theory of uncertainty. So QuantumThink is not about science. It's about how the discoveries of science shape the way we think, or how we can shape our thinking now. So when you realize, because I didn't want to get off of that school story. I think it's an important point you're making in many ways, that when you realize that the circumstances we do have, they're valid. How we relate to them is where our creative power lies. But because we're connected literally through the field, there is that, and they say in science, it's not even an energy exchange, but to understand it, we can think of it as an energy intelligence exchange. We just have a connection. And through that connection, we influence. So it is just as easy to catch ourselves in the least action pathway declaration. Oh, it's really hard to learn, the upper and lower case of 26 letters. And say, well, wait a minute. Why do we want to live from that context? There is no absolute way that things are, that it is, the situation is, the circumstances are. Therefore, reality is context dependent. It's dependent on the context that we bring. That's the observer effect. Or as I like to say it very simply, what we bring is what we get, because we're always connecting and shaping it. So wouldn't it be just as easy as you just caught it, Ramon, to interrupt that and say, well, wait a minute, let's not make this hard. Let's have this be, wow, 26 letters, that's a cinch, given that we already know 500 Chinese characters, right? Anyway, or is it Japanese you were talking about? Because you're in Japan.
Yeah, it's Chinese characters, but...
Chinese idea. So it literally, when you say, well, do we create our reality? Did we create the moon? Who knows? On a collective, esoteric level, maybe we're all holding that hologram in place. But just on a very everyday basis, we have the opportunity to literally live from these principles. Now, I say, instead of looking at them from the old world view, more limited, influence of that industrial age worldview, you take a literal leap in consciousness, and that's why I wrote this book, is put together, here are basically the 21 plus 1 principles. What are the principles? Holistic and holographic, infinite possibility, observer effect, resonance, energy and flux. And when you look at it as one whole system, and you start to bring it into your awareness just by reading this, then the whole system clicks in. And so I wanted to get back to your original question, Ramon. I did go off there, but I think we're still in the same field. So you were asking, say it again, what you were asking.
Gonna have to rewind the tape. Because my mind was already moving on to the next question.
Oh, jeez.
But I think it relates to the same thing, and I was gonna make an observation, and I think, and at that moment when I was there at the table and I'm listening to this and I'm just shaking my head, I realized something even grander, that we keep forgetting that even before you're born, you've made such an amazing accomplishment. So, our parents, they had the good time and then the conception, and out of how many millions and several million sperm cells, you're the first in the longest marathon. And we forget that. So that means that you came out of the best out of a million. I mean, we don't even do anything like that on this level, and that's the first thing we do. So I feel that as humans, we tend to forget the accomplishment, and then let alone learning how to walk. That's just, I mean, I still have bruises from that time. So, in the energy field, because so many of us, and I think this was the original question, because so many of us have put this thing into the energy field that it's hard to do this, it's impossible to do this. You know, I'm to this, I'm to that to accomplish something. We always look for excuse. So is that why we automatically go into that? Because there's so much of that in the field.
Yeah, because we have that, what I call, you know, not to insult anyone, but a classical mechanical worldview. The world is machine. In many ways, we've become automatic and mechanical too. Now, yeah. So the point is this: is that the truth? What I just said? Well, if there are no absolutes, right? It's one possible way of making a distinction about reality. And what I have found is that this, which has come through me, and I'm grateful to be that vehicle of QuantumThink, it works, okay? And I think that's really the important thing, is that if you can, you know, later when I get to the distinction, conscious evolution, I then turn it around and say, okay, this is the level of evolution we've reached. And so we project everything in us. I love what you said about, you know, the brilliance of what we accomplish. We don't even, you know, realize how the idea of just existence, it's just awesome beyond words, right? So we projected that classical mechanical worldview, I'll say, because, you know, we don't need a reason, but let's say we needed at the time to organize, you know, the chaos of reality and, you know, try to get the sciences going and try to discover the laws of the universe and try to see how they could work to make life easier for us. So that's really, now we could say we can look at those automaticities, the automatic thoughts, the things that are in the culture. There are least action pathways of gender, of ethnicity. We know this, right? Because, you know, even of nations where we say, oh, you know, the Italians are very relaxed, they love life, and the Germans are very stringent and, you know, like a clockwork. You know, we have all these least action pathways. So when you look at it just as a least action pathway without adding any meaning, and you can interrupt, already you've heightened your awareness in that moment enough to say, I'm going to interrupt that thought. Okay, there's a least action pathway coming in that I can't do this or that this is difficult. Let me go to the dynamic of creation for human beings. Intent. What is my intent right now in this situation? And it becomes a natural way of life. So I like, you know, what Tom was saying earlier about these thoughts. What were you saying? These
throwing up the flag.
Right. These thoughts come in, and, oh, I know what you were saying. You were saying, of course, you're attentive to the ones that aren't working for us. Because obviously, if it's working, it's not like we're going to monitor every thought. But if we're not getting the experience that we want in the moment, or we're feeling some kind of anxiety, it can even be about, going to a family dinner. It could be going to a business meeting. It could be anything where an experience comes up for you, where, as you said, Tom, one that isn't serving you or others. Then we have the opportunity, just by having this set of distinctions, that's just the old worldview kicking in. Let me interrupt that and let me return. What is my intent? Consciously awake. What is quantum thinking was the original question. It is thinking that goes beyond the limits of conditioning that no longer serves ourselves or others. That's really what it is. It's thinking in sync with knowledge at the edge of discovery today that is converging, and the science we know is now verifying and reconverging with wisdom, with spiritual wisdom that is common to all traditions. So now I remember your question, which was, well, you mean if more of us do, then that's how it happens. And, that's 100. It's not only that, it does. It's been proven. And there is, I don't know if you know him, biologist. I don't know him personally. His name is Rupert Sheldrake.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Morphogenetic fields. And he talks about this where, it happens when someone runs, right? Someone runs the 4-minute mile. And because of morphogenetic fields, which is another way we connect through actual, form, right? Let's say, how would we say that? Like the blueprint of form that is being communicated to one another. That's why the 100th Monkey, that story, it wasn't that the monkeys on the other island had no physical, right, communication with the original monkeys who somehow evolved to be able to wash their own potatoes, right? To wash
right,
the
right.
eating the pan. There he goes. And you know it better than I do, I'm sure. But that's the idea, is in the morphogenetic field. Yes, that happens. So when you put all this together, all this knowledge together, and you realize, wow, we can, if I can learn to integrate this as a way of life, not just knowing it, and that's the purpose of my work, is to live the wisdom, not just know the wisdom, not just teach, espouse, spew the wisdom, but to actually integrate it. And I've heard you say also, both of you, it happens in your experience. So how do we give ourselves the experience of this knowledge without having to wait, 20 years or sit and meditate on a mountaintop in the Himalayas? Is that what I call the art of distinguishing, a new world view of learning. It's not acquiring information that you have to try to then apply. It's bringing something into our awareness, as we're doing right now, and as you do on all of your shows, in such a way that we have an elevation in our own awareness, in our own consciousness, just being able to tap into that which is already in all of us. It's not like I'm saying something you don't already know at some level of your being. You wouldn't relate to it if it wasn't in, it's already in us, right? We're infinitely everything we could possibly, every possible human trait and awareness. So it really does, that's why when I listened to you both at the beginning of the show, and I was thinking, you know what? It's like mind-boggling. But I really think the shift, it's not like it happens all on one day, December 21st, 2012. But, it's already happening because if I'm a student of astrology, if you understand, planetary energies, or it's all cycles on top of cycles all working together, then you realize it's already happening, and it can happen where there are these instantaneous leaps, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we're at the top of the hour, and I want to give you a chance to tell us how people can find you, where they can get the book, where are you speaking.
Well, my website is www.diannecollins.com. It's Dianne with two N's, DianneCollins.com. And mostly I'm speaking in the media lately, but however, and my husband and I offer at no charge twice a month via teleconference what I call Ultimate Study Group. It's ultimate because it's with readers of Do You Quantum Think from all over the world. Even if you never read the book, everyone is invited. And you can, if you just put your name on the mailing list, you'll receive all the announcements and invitations. And it's an interactive teleconference where we just discuss the different principles and people share how it's working or not working. And that's Ultimate Study Group. And otherwise, I'm in the media, and we do private consulting. Occasionally we do public programs, but we haven't done any lately. But I think that, we're consulting leaders who everyone knows we need to think in a new way. We don't have time to do this old world linear step. And I want to read my book, of course, which is available online, Amazon. It's in Barnes & Noble, and it's in stores everywhere books are sold, although not in every store, but you can order it. So it's Do You Quantum Think? New Thinking That Will Rock Your World is the title.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, we'll get into this instantaneous shift that is possible in the second segment here. Wow, this is some good stuff. I hope everybody's enjoying it as much as Ramon and I are.
Yes.
I'm speaking for you, Ramon, just by the way.
That's fine. You're correct.
Okay, guys. We will see you in the second hour. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
The love you deny is the pain you carry.
See you in a while.
Yes, This song is called Be the Change, inspired by the words of Mahatma Gandhi, who lived for peace and not violence, and told us to be the change we wish to see in the world. Freedom's calling, I feel the fire that's deep inside us. Everybody wants change, but tell me who will guide us. To the leaders that pass away, put up your lighters. It's a beautiful struggle, but it cannot divide us. We're the ones that we've always been waiting for. See yourself in the mirror and open up the door. Walk through it and feel the love throughout your pores. Be the light, life's purpose is to feel joy. Metaphysical, lyrical, standing up for truth. The only one to make change is walking in your shoes. Be the example, don't complain about the news. Making music and serving the world with the loot. Now you can be the same, or you can be the change. Find strength from inside, break through the chains. No one to blame, nothing to prove. You create your reality, it's up to you. Be the change
that you wanna see in the world. Like Gandhi live for peace,
aspire to be.
Someone who fights for the beliefs like Martin Luther King.
Aspire to be
that love,
that light,
like Christ,
this light
for the moment indeed.
And if you believe
in Jehovah,
Allah,
Buddha,
Krishna,
it's up to me.
My soul yearns for peace in a world that's flooded with war. History's littered with body scar, trying to settle the score and maintain an archaic platform of power and greed. People fight for land out of survival and need. So I'm killing my television and I'm planting a seed to fill my head with knowledge that I'm seeing receive. Due to the media propaganda, killing my creed. Oh, what don't kill me make me stronger, feeling strength when I bleed. Fighting for inches and forwards attached to feet. They try to say you anything in this world, nothing for free. Land, air, fire, and water, they keep up in the ante while the anti-proletariat told the powers to be. But we keep fighting, surviving, and thriving, recycling and rhyming.